Great. We're super excited and going to go ahead and kick off this webinar. Keep it rather conversational as opposed to just slide after slide. But regardless, want to dive in with the topic around scaling beyond the plateau. A lot of folks, I'm sure, can relate to just kind of having that sort of hitting that wall and hitting that buffer where it's just harder to break through as you're looking to continue accelerating growth and scale. So with that said, let me introduce our two panelists and speakers here, experts from ZoomInfo. And we have Veronica Hudson, our Director of Product Management, and Caitlin Sanders, Head of Business Value and Insights. And I'll let you two give your intro. I'm sure I can't do it justice.
Sure, I can go first. I'm Veronica Hudson. I have been at ZoomInfo for about 6 months now, but I have been in the product management space for 10-ish years, primarily focused on marketing technologies, email, ad space, etc. And I'm very excited to be here and to share some tips with you all today.
I'm Caitlin. I've been here for about 2.5 years. I work in the kind of a bridge between the CX and the sales space and also product. But I've been in the ABM space for many years. I came from demand-based before I joined ZoomInfo. Great to be here.
Love it. Love the experience. And actually on that, we're looking at how to kind of break through that plateau and hit the next milestone as business grows. I think your backgrounds obviously speak really well to it. I mean, one of the things that I've learned is, and Courtney Keel with Expert Marketing Advisors, we're preferred partners with ZoomInfo and love the relationship. But where we were a year ago to where we want to be in 5 years, we can't do the same things. And the tools start changing, the team starts changing, and as that growth happens, it's really important to recognize the things that are needed, and hence, ZoomInfo really pulling in that data. So with that, let me see. Next one here. I'm just going to kick it over to both of you. Sort of why do you guys see growth stalling, and what are some of those roadblocks and people are trying to break through that ceiling?
Yeah. So why growth stalls? I think a lot of it has to do with scalability, automation, how large your team is, how much you can scale at a time is something I hear constantly on calls. So having technologies in place to help scale your efforts can really amplify results. Veronica, I know, even though she's on the product side, she has been on the CX side. So what have you experienced as well? I guess same kind of that like fragmented sales marketing, not being able to scale, not having
Yes,
data.
definitely the scaling challenges. I do think, it's called out here, inefficient targeting. That's something I have seen in my years working on the email side. I see it now in the ad space where people assume casting the widest net possible is the best route to go, when really you need to be very focused about not only creating your TAM and your ICPs, but segments within each of those so that you are making sure you're targeting the right groups that are searching for the right intent topics with the right content in the places that they live on the internet. If you're not doing that, you're probably wasting ad dollars, you're probably wasting resources, and you're not going to get a super high ROI. So that's something that I'm very, I don't know about passionate about, but something that I talk to all of our customers about being really intentional about who you're talking to, what you're saying to them, and where you're meeting them.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say it is worth taking that time and doing it, really setting up that foundation and doing it with care and intent, because it will, of course, speed up your conversion and shorten your sales cycle. All of the above, you're not, casting that wide net that doesn't land. So that's a good point.
Yeah. Going on the intentional side too, I completely agree, where on this outcome, more of a shifting into an outcome-driven environment, being intentional with how you're segmenting your audiences, what micro journeys you're creating within those are really important, and then aligning relative buying signals to those different micro journeys. So I know it can be a little bit complex, but if you start small, and you see that small, layer of success, you can take that and use that as your framework for building out a larger program.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, and actually to that, the as folks are hitting different milestones and the growth challenges, processes are often looked at. What worked before may not necessarily work in the next stage and phase. And we were actually just kind of spitballing a little bit earlier, and of course, there's no way to talk about processes without bringing up AI. So, what are maybe some of the other components that you're seeing come up there?
Oh, with the AI stuff
Yeah,
that
and this.
is so I'm in AI a lot. So is Veronica. A lot of things that we see is, and something we were talking about earlier, is the inauthenticity. When you first start using an AI bot, I know typically it can take some time to train a bot to be able to understand like what you're trying to say and to output it in the right framework and in the right voice. So a lot of what we're seeing is kind of the copy paste motion here, where we're getting kind of like a really enriched answer. It looks great, awesome. Let's just pop this in a
Right.
report or a strategic blueprint and call it a day. And we need to be really careful to read the fine print of those and to just kind of modify and trim some of that down.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, with ZoomInfo, those of us that have used this tool before, or perhaps those of us that are just kind of exploring the intent signals and then knowing when and what to say and how is a big one. It's like I always call you guys like sort of the premium of all of the various options, and it really brings that together. So something to clarify there.
And
Veronica, you were saying you have to think about essentially treating AI as an intern. Did I catch that?
an intern, an entry-level employee. I now am in a managerial role, have been for a few years now, and you
Mhm.
make assumptions about people coming onto your team, how much they know, how much context they have, how will they receive feedback. And a lot of people make those same assumptions with AI, or even more so because they just assume it's incredibly smart. But you really need to think about it as an entry-level employee that knows nothing. It's their first job out of college. They don't have the right context. They need feedback on their output. They need very specific instructions. And so as you are working with AI, and you are feeding it prompts, it's really important to provide that context in the uh, by way of, uploading documentation. So we were talking about like personalization earlier. If you are wanting to create some email copy or ad copy, you should be uploading good examples that you've written in the past. So it is in your own voice. You're thinking about the customer. You need to be very specific about the segments that you are sending to, and you need to do multiple rounds of feedback. You also need to check their work. AI hallucinates. You might get responses that are not accurate or really far off base from what you had expected. So you need to check that work. You need to give that feedback and just really be in that mindset of this is not technology that is smarter than me. It is technology that I need to train to do the thing that I need to do.
Right,
It's
right.
basically going to take your idea and expand on that, but it's not going to give you the idea. So it's really piggybacking on what Veronica was saying with these bots. Like you really need to provide it with the right resources. If it doesn't have any background on the company, the org, think of like your best marketers, right? And your best sales reps. They're particularly research driven.
Mhm.
So just like the bots, think of it this way too. They're research driven. So the more information you're feeding them and then providing them with a templatized way to respond, like think of tone, think
Mhm.
of EQ, think of the formatting, think of really understanding your customer and their goals and feeding them all that and being like and also letting them know, who are you presenting the information to? Is this just for internal use? Is it, if it's external, what's the persona? Is it a CMO? Is it SVP of sales? So um, providing that to the bot will really elevate how you can use it. And you'll be surprised like how much you can scale after training it, correcting it, and
Right.
you could eventually not have to give it all that detail. There's a lot of AI programs where you can make projects where you put a very detailed template of the output you want, and then you'd be like, if I give you this type of question, this is what I'm associating it with. So it can get easier where you don't have to provide all that context over and over again. It's just the initial implementation.
And
Right.
one other thing I would want to add too is just, we have market shifts on this screen as well. It's not just you using AI. You have to assume that your customers are as well. They could be using AI to research different businesses to pick a best solution for them, a solution or product, whatever they're looking for. And so you also need to be cognizant of how you are showing up in their AI work. In the future, I think in the not far future, we're also going to see bots, for example, that are able to trial software for us and run that PLG motion themselves. So it's important to think through not just AI as like it applies to your business, but that
Right.
aspect of like your own customers and their how they're using it and applying it to their everyday life as it relates to your business.
That actually gave me an idea, Veronica. I'm thinking of as like how AI or how your business looks within
Yeah.
AI as they're researching. That's a test you can actually run internally. So asking it, questions that your customer would about your business. And if you're not, typically a lot of these bots will pull or scrape the internet. If it's not a blocked site or if it's public. So if you are not showing up in the right way, that could show a gap within
Mhm. Mhm.
maybe what content, maybe there's a lot of outdated content on site. Maybe we need to shift perspective on like how we're, marketing,
Right.
the advertising campaigns, messaging, things like that. So to piggyback, if you're running that test and it's not showing up, you're not showing up correctly, ask the bot, this is how I would like to be um,
Mhm.
or I would like to come up if people are doing active research on our company. How can we take steps to ensure that this is the output moving forward?
Yeah.
So,
No, that's great. I mean, it absolutely pushes folks forward, in my opinion. I think that those that are not using AI would definitely hit that ceiling as we're speaking. Veronica, to your point, the AI bots, you have to think about what is it going to be, how is that going to be perceived on the other end, on the receiver's end. And we were kind of jokingly, I think last week we had a call with a prospect, and we were like, well, let's just get his AI bot together with our AI bot and let the two of them hash it out. Because it's just
Yeah.
like, but yeah, it's definitely changing the way we go about things. Yeah, great. So on the buyer's behaviors and such, is it really, I mean, I don't want to make this all AI, but I mean, it does seem that you're seeing some changes in the focus, in the intelligence of people. It's sort of that saying, think smarter, not harder, and
mhm,
kind of finding that as our buyers are finding us.
Yeah.
yeah.
Definitely.
Cool. Okay. So on to just maybe like how this actually looks when it's laid, sort of through. And of course, nothing's ever in a straight line, but it's the power of data. Data is king. Maybe some of the points here we can kind of dig into.
Yeah, so going into aligning sales and marketing with AI driven insights. So this kind of leans, I'll kind of scrape on Copilot. So we have some tools offered from our sales tool Copilot where you can uncover those insights not only through their digest, but there's a ton of features like an AI chat where you can dive into the signals and the company firmographics. So think of an AI bot, but its data foundation is ZoomInfo. That's how it operates. So it can kind of pull out all those business insights, scoops, and relevant signals that could indicate interest or buying.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Right.
it's
And then kind
also
of bring
able.
this in. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it also, so we have a sales product and a marketing product, Copilot and ZoomInfo marketing. A lot of those signals that you're able to pull through to Copilot are marketing signals. So an account engaged with a campaign, someone visited your website. We recently launched, buyer ID. So with some degree of certainty. We can tell you not just the account, but the person that visited your site. They filled out a form, and that's all passed on to sales as a signal of this is an account or an individual you should probably act on sooner rather than later, given their engagement with marketing. And so then we're able to kind of get that flywheel going of that engagement happens on the sales side. We have some of that data, and we're able to then communicate to marketing what was performing best. And I think that flywheel motion, it's something that we're building out, but is going to become incredibly important in leveraging AI. We traditionally think about sales and marketing alignment as a handoff. Marketing gives the lead to sales, sales does something with it. It's really more of a closed loop where, or it should be, sales does something with it, marketing learns about what worked and what didn't, and they feed that into future marketing endeavors.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. It is much more of a circle. The same on the customer retention side and expansion side. I always I'm like, marketing works for sales, and we're providing that air cover, but we need to, work in tandem together to make sure we're all, the right hand is talking to the left.
Right.
That's great.
Absolutely. And marketing just doesn't stop at at the pre-sale motion. It
Right.
should, go into post-sale. I'd say most of the customers I work with are working on expansion opportunities within their existing customer base on top of trying to capture net new. So
Right.
it's definitely important to have that insight. You can use those signals that are available in, databases like ZoomInfo or solutions where you can kind of, differentiate like, okay, let me start to segment my signals by what's, relevant to that particular solution. So think of not only just solution-based signaling, but pain points, opportunities, use cases, functional areas. Think of signals in a different way from not just like what it is exactly they're researching, but what they could be experiencing that would lead them to be interested in that or lead to an opportunity within, with,
Right. It's giving more of that holistic view.
yeah.
Yeah.
Not
And I
just
know, Caitlin, yeah, you've had a lot of success with incorporating scoops. If we're talking about like refining targeting and personalization and optimizing as well, it would be great if you talk about how you
Yeah.
incorporate that.
Hoops are amazing. They think of them as your validator for not only timing of interest, but also for validating what they're researching online. Especially, I know a lot of customers where they're targeting, I'll use universities as an example, where there could be a lot of noise, let's say, with that third-party intent research where you have professors, students, faculty, everything. And we want to drill down to, are they really in market or not? So the scoops are a validator for that. Think of like a change in leadership, hiring plans. It could be a project expansion or tech consolidation within marketing. You can drill down to specific departments, specific projects, pain points, and then you can leverage the database we have to access those scoop descriptions within the sales component. But we can also select the timing on that. So think of typically like a project, you think of propensity modeling. So a project typically spans what, and Veronica's probably more versed on this, like in your space, like what, 6 to 8 months maybe for
Yeah.
like a sprint. And so that might be that's an opportunity for marketing to nurture that account. Whereas think of a pain point more like a security breach or a maybe they a CMO just stepped down and a new one stepped in. They're going to be doing a heavy evaluation of tech stack.
Right.
So certain types
Tool
of
displacement.
insights will also align with certain levels of urgency or, do we just hand this to sales or do we need to nurture this further? So by combining different types of signals, scoops, third-party intent, and things like technographics and all the firmographic, info or predictive scoring to make sure that account is also a good fit. When that all comes together, you then have a more kind of accurate, but also idea of how to target them and what journey to send them down.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I find that Scoops really valuable for quite some time. I feel like Scoops has been a part of the ZoomInfo offering for half a dozen years or so. I
Been
don't
a
know, I'm
while.
dating myself. But yeah, definitely, and also across competitors too, as you kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
see who's coming to the table there, that makes a difference.
So a great play for competitors that I will typically run is I'll select, well, first we build out the target account list.
Mhm.
Then when I go into technologies, I'll select the competitors. So a series of that. Either I'll select them all in one bunch, but if there's a lot of variables of what they excel in versus the other, I might
Right.
segment it out. Once I
Mhm.
have that selected, then I want to say, okay, what if they own a competitor, what would trigger them to evaluate us? So
Mhm.
that I'm thinking of like CMO changes or
Right.
tech consolidation. And then if I'm doing consolidation, I'm like, oh, do they own our sales solution too?
Mhm.
So they're looking to consolidate and they already own a one of your products. That's going to be an easier entry point
Right.
conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. So with all of that, I feel like we've made it from aligning to refining to optimizing. The automation piece is really the next level, and that's I think where folks can really break through that barrier, which is but setting these first ones up is really that foundation.
Oh,
Maybe we can talk about that.
absolutely. Like that, I mean, that's the reason people will typically invest in an ABM technology to
Mhm.
scale and automate. So not only, automating where you're syncing your audiences to, whether it be LinkedIn, Meta, or targeting programmatically or to email, but think of your audiences. I can remember back in the day, like start of my career, like digital marketing, having to refresh audiences like once every 2 weeks or once a month because they went stale and we needed to identify those signals again. So having dynamic audiences where the signals are refreshing every day and you can kind of set it and let it run throughout its cycle. The only thing you really have to worry about, not say worry, but um, plan for now is swapping out assets, which I'm sure will soon be a thing of the past um, with all the growth with AI and everything. And that
Right.
can Veronica can speak to a lot of that and how our product is adapting to be more intuitive and automated.
Yeah. And like even like where we are today, I think a lot of audiences, and this is something Caitlin and I have talked about extensively, are created in service of a campaign. So a campaign is oftentimes a point in time with a set budget. But you can also use our audiences to scale your understanding of your TAM and your ICPs and your
Right.
penetration in that market. So, creating a TAM audience that you can just look at in terms of how many people are in here, what are they
Mhm.
doing, how are we measuring it, and we're looking to scale that up as well. So we know that there's audiences that you're not going to like always be activating on, like I said earlier, like don't necessarily always cast the widest net. That's true in some circumstances, but not in most. But you should still be able to look at and measure what is my penetration into that market. But we're also looking to automate in smaller ways. For example, um, when a campaign is launched and we send that accounts engaged with Signal to Copilot, we want to also populate seller outreach emails with the context of the ad and who looked at it. So when a seller does decide to send an outreach email, they don't have to think about like they don't have to know what the ad was about. They don't have to have seen it. We're already kind of writing them a email that they can use for outreach. The purpose of that being, quite obvious. We're giving them that content, but you also know that with sellers, they don't want to do outreach. It's like, hey, I saw you were looking at our pricing page, or hey, looks like you clicked through an ad that we sent. Like that's a little creepy for people. It's not necessarily something that people respond to but very well. But if you know the kind of initial engagement point for them, and you can assume there was some resonation there because they clicked through or they visited that page of the website, you can automate a lot of that outreach and a lot of that content writing based off of that context in a way that sellers don't really have right
Right.
now. And there's also like a lot that we are planning to do with automating campaign creation using AI tooling in the future, as well as better leveraging our workflows. So I think workflows are a tool within ZoomInfo that haven't gotten quite as much traction as you would expect. But being able to associate a workflow with a campaign or an audience to, yeah, have more of that syncing, but also to move an audience or an account from one audience to another based on how they engaged, and then automatically drop them into a new campaign. So there's
Excellent.
a lot that we have planned there. There's a lot that we already have on offer, but that's a real area of the product that I'm very excited about as
Yeah.
we move into the second half of this year.
Yeah, that's very cool. We have a lot of folks that we come across where they're sort of in their earlier stage or again hitting that sort of wall. And they think they know their ICP. They don't have it really proven. They don't have the data to back that up, but they have a pretty good idea. Well, this makes sense with these people, operations here, or these people here on the, the so it is a great way to sort of look and see if there's other markets to break into, even on the partnership side and channels and such. So really making sure that you're not leaving money on the table as you're looking for it.
Funny, that's a prompt I designed for the we have a Copilot chat
Mhm.
feature. You can go into the account profile and ask what gaps and opportunities am I
Mhm.
missing, and it
Right.
will identify those for you, which is really cool. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
That's
it's definitely, I know we're probably like talking like a lot, probably sounds like very complex what we're talking about, but for everyone on the webinar, I want you to know like this is totally attainable and doable and scalable. Just start small and simple and then work your way like at a layered approach and just keep building on top of that framework. You can start small. Um,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely a big takeaway is don't be intimidated, and just kind of, chip away at things. So yeah, with that, businesses with the data-driven approach really puts their dollars in the right place and their time in the right place. So I think we have a use case or a couple here that just I'm taking a quick time check. I know we kind of blocked out half an hour for this, so we might be going a little fast here toward the end. Just want to encourage folks to put questions into the chat or the Q&A, and maybe we can go through some of these examples here.
Yes, this is do you want me to dive into the
Yeah,
story?
yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So this is one of our enterprise accounts where again, it was a identification issue. So it was needing the database or access to the database to identify net new contacts and having the automation to a social platform like LinkedIn in order to target those. But not only those as a standalone, having the ability to combine them with Signal. So you, again, have a dynamic audience, and then you're sending that over. The list is being refreshed so they don't have to worry about targeting stale accounts or stale leads. With that, we were able to get an immediate jump in engagement with this one account or with this one customer. From there, they wanted to pilot the DSP to launch a multi-channel campaign. We were able to see a ton of success there by just starting small. So we started by just adding in, intent signals. Let's prove out that that works. Great. Once that works, so let's, then evolve to brand aware and retarget. Great, that works. Let's expand full funnel. Brand aware, retarget pipeline. Great. Let's add in more signals. So we're chipping away little by little. It's like you want to see what works. Great. Layer on. That way you're not trying to test everything at once and you're trying to figure out what's not working. It's like a needle in a haystack.
Right,
Uh,
right. It's just fully understanding the information and giving you
yeah,
that, like empowering you for the next
yeah.
decision.
And that way it's not overwhelming and you're not like this or that. You kind of start small. We built the framework up, and this
Mhm.
was all account level, multi-signal based for the most part, but we are shifting into persona targeting now, which I know a lot of people are within the space. So creating more so of those micro journeys. And one thing that's important to emphasize is like, don't kill what's already working, right? So just because you're shifting to persona-based targeting doesn't mean you have to scrap that entire strategy that's been really successful for you and to start over. It's more about just evolving it, keeping the
Mhm.
same framework you've had at the account level, but then matching those signals to the persona level. And
Sure,
then, so it's just elevating what you're already doing instead of having to completely redesign your framework. So
sure.
it was a
And then
pretty,
that sounds like it would also apply for folks that are updating their messaging or pivoting, not just on the vertical or persona approach, but messaging too, as you really see what's working and what's not.
exactly.
And
And the persona targeting really allows you to become hyper personalized at that point where, and you know it's accurate, right? Because a lot of times, and I've seen this with other tools where they have like a personalized tokens on ads that will like say a company name or the industry, and it's great. But a lot of times, sometimes if it's not tracked correctly, it could
right,
produce like the wrong company or cookie. Or
right.
the wrong company or company name or
Mhm,
industry.
mhm.
Sorry. But I mean, these hyper personalized journeys then allow you to tailor that content, but with a platform like ZoomInfo or another ABM platform, you're then able to scale that at a multi-channel level.
Right,
So think about a single audience within ZoomInfo marketing at the persona level. I can build out a persona-based funnel. I can then target them at different areas of the funnel, but and then on different channels that would be best suited for that persona and that objective. So
right.
it allows you a lot of options and flexibility in your targeting strategy and kind of how you're interacting with these accounts and users at these accounts.
What sort of time frame would something like this take, or what would you recommend as folks are thinking about their calendar year and such?
Time frame for building out a strategy like this?
Yeah, just as you're kind of testing, you're putting that, that first layer, then the next layer, I mean, a lot of folks, of course, they want to just jump right to growth and push a
Yeah.
button.
I, I'd say from the marketing side, it might be, and Veronica, feel free to chime in too. It might be easier to start from the influencer, champion, and end user perspective.
Sure.
That's typically going to be more top funnel interactions. So start with a brand aware play,
Mhm,
target that kind of like larger span of personas
mhm.
with high value, kind of like an educational resource type of content.
Mm,
Because if, they start engaging and they're like, oh, how can this make my job easier? How can I scale this? So, what can I learn here? And then kind of expand out, into that decision maker realm. I think a lot of times what I'm seeing is they want to jump right to the decision makers
right.
immediately. And they're like,
Mhm.
I want to target all CMOs and CEOs
Yeah,
for this brand aware campaign for this educational resource. And I'm like, okay, like let's figure out first what resonates with this group the most, and we
mhm.
want to make sure that that content and that messaging aligns. We want to make sure we're not just serving a bunch of enterprise level CEOs.
Right, right. And
Um,
and taking into account the champions, so right, the actual end
yeah,
users are the ones that you want to really get that stickiness with, and then that support.
exactly.
Hmm.
Something I always, a great strategy too is if you have a long sales cycle and if your marketing team is supporting sales during that cycle, I always have them run a campaign to target those end users, champions, and gatekeepers around content like product comparisons about like if there's some like a new release on a
Hmm.
feature or if there's something that will elevate or make their job easier during that process, they're going to be the ones that are whispering to
Right, right.
their
It's
decision.
almost like look at them as an advisory board. They're,
Yeah.
they're the one you want to really listen, get that feedback, and of course ensure that they feel very valued and all of their input is taken into account.
Yeah. And that's something you can lean a little on with AI with if you're unsure what type of content resonates with what personas and what type of content resonates with like what area of the funnel. Ask AI and give them that, the detailed description of who you're targeting and what your goal is. And they can definitely give some great suggestions.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. I know we've run over a little bit, so I do want to be conscious of everybody. We did get a couple of questions here. Do we have time to hang on a little longer, 5 more minutes?
Um,
Sorry. I know our days are always back to back. Well, here, I'll just, so
Yep.
you suggested businesses use data to find their best customers and scale faster. And you're saying just, if you haven't already started this process, don't be afraid, layer it in. Common scaling mistakes that you've seen, maybe we can double down on that one and how companies can avoid those scaling mistakes.
I think you just kind of touched on that, Caitlin, with a couple of points that you made. Like one, wanting to like jump to target like CEOs and CMOs right away, like
Mhm.
that is more of a strategy mistake probably because it's not necessarily a scaling mistake because that's a much smaller bucket than the other groups that you had mentioned. And I think also your point about like you don't need to scrap strategies that are working because you want to try something new. I think marketers are natural born tinkerers and experimenters. I've seen this like with I've worked with people on email automation where they just want to tweak every little piece of an automation and just to see what happens. But sometimes that can like shoot us in the foot when like you can scale net new while still also focusing on what's worked by making minor tweaks.
Right.
If you're scrapping what's worked every time, you're starting from square one every time, maybe with some learnings, but you have that huge ramp up period. You should be, as you're ramping up on new customer categories or ICPs or areas of targeting, you should also still, yeah, focus on what's worked and think about tweaking there versus
Right.
starting fresh entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, there's so many times I've seen folks where they're pivoting their messaging so often that they're not
Yeah.
letting any of it actually resonate, and then getting sort of that full circle, that full loop. So
Absolutely. And there's a lot of points too with like, look at the data to give you the answers. And a lot of that when you're unsure of what to adjust or how to scale, like if you have a high CTR, but a high bounce rate at the
right.
same time, like it's probably a misalignment between your messaging CTA and your asset and then what's on your landing page, especially in like the header or like your focal point when you're sorry, my brain is
The top of fold. Yeah. But there are disconnects, and
Oh,
it's identifying, wait, this is not quite where it needs to be, and
yeah.
always improving upon it. Yeah.
And it
And
could
that's
also be,
another good, oh, sorry, go ahead, Caitlin.
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say that's another good use of AI tooling. Like sometimes that data can be a bit overwhelming, or you're like, I don't have time to sift through this. I'll like take a data set, upload it to Claude, or even just like within Google Sheets, use Gemini to
Mhm.
say, what is this telling me? You definitely have to check for hallucinations, but it is a good way to like at least get some like jumping off points for areas to
Right.
dive deeper into. Because yeah, oftentimes that's a scale issue for me personally of like I don't have time to like sift through all this data and like figure out a
Yeah.
story here. So that's an area where I use AI
What
quite a
can
bit.
help for that too, just to add on to what you're saying, to help it to limit the hallucinations, instead of just saying, what is it telling me? Let them know, what is this telling me based on the goal I needed to achieve?
Mm,
And
yeah.
then also be like, what is this telling? Like, point out what you're noticing on a human level. Be like, I'm noticing that there's like a really low CTR or this. And
Mhm.
be like and ask it to be like, do you need any other context to give me a more accurate answer? And it might ask you to upload your assets or
Mhm.
share with them your landing page.
Right.
So like going back to what Veronica said in the beginning, talk to them like you would an intern or someone that has just, joined the company, they're brand new. How would you teach them? Would you just be like, this isn't working? Why? You would give them a ton of context on like, here's everything, like go to town and do your deep research and figure out what's not working. The more you give it, the better the output's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. I think without a doubt, but a huge takeaway this year in particular, folks are leaning in. Whereas last year there was a little bit more fear surrounding, sort of bringing on all the tools and different options. Of course, it's like a playground of tools out there. But I do feel, there's the ZoomInfos of the world that will ultimately bubble up. And I think that comes down to just being user friendly and being like comprehensive. So great. Well, I'm gonna wrap here. Folks, if you want to reach out, you can find us really anywhere on our website, LinkedIn, on the email here, and we can certainly get you in touch with Caitlin and Veronica as well. I want to thank you very much for joining me, ladies. This is fun. I always love talking shop. So hopefully you have some good plans for the weekend and can unwind and then hit the ground again next week, as we do. So yeah, thank
So
you
for
so much,
having us.
everyone.
Yeah,
I
thank you.